welcome to the lecture number 23 in this series on noise control in mechanical systems. So, in the previous lecture we dealt with the noise regulations and guidelines and will continue the same in this lecture as well. So, to sum up, in the previous lecture we studied about what is the need for noise control and for noise regulations, why we need some global standards, policies, etc. for noise pollution. So, here we will continue. So, in the previous lecture we stopped with the workplace noise regulation and we were discussing about some of the international standards. So, two things we have to discuss. One was the Occupational Safety and Health Administration guidelines, and today we will discuss about the NIOSH guidelines. Then some of the judicial interventions that have been done, some landmark cases in India with respect to noise regulation. What are the challenges in enforcing these noise regulations and what are the noise control, a summary of the noise control measures that are being taken, and what is the future of noise regulation. So, this is a summary. So, we had begun the discussion on the OSHA guidelines. They have recommended what should be the maximum dBA for a particular amount of exposure time for a worker in an occupational environment, considering the worker is working 8 hours daily for 5 days a week. If this is a typical exposure of the worker, in that case the noise level has to be the upper limit being 90 dBA, and suppose the worker is being exposed not to 8 hours daily but to 6 hours daily. In that case the sound level exposure maximum limit becomes 92 dBA and so on, and the worker cannot be exposed with a continuous exposure of more than 115 dBA in that occupational environment, and even any instant outburst should not exceed 140 dB. And whenever the noise exposure in any kind of occupational environment, whether industry, factory, office spaces, anything exceeds the 85 dBA level, then the employers must implement some hearing conservation programs. So, what do you mean by the hearing conservation programs? It means that within the occupational or the working environment, things such as some off time from the machinery, some rotation of job, as well as use of ear mufflers or ear plugs, use of sound controlling devices near the machinery. So, such kind of interventions need to be introduced if the noise level exceeds this. In the same way, we have already studied about the sound exposure levels for given by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, or the NIOSH. This is slightly more stricter guideline, where here in this case where it was for 8 hours 90 dBA, here the maximum limit for an 8-hour duration is 85 dBA, and as already discussed, with every 3 dB increase in the exposure level, the maximum exposure time reduces by a factor of 2 and vice versa. Okay, so let us see again, so this was the global perspective. Let us see the noise regulation in India and what are some of the key regulatory bodies which a person can approach with respect to problems related to noise and the regulation of noise. So, we have at the center the Central Pollution Control Board, CPCB, and this is the statutory organization under the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change. This is the principal body that is responsible for enforcement of any kind of noise standards in India, as well as issuing any kind of guidelines, monitoring of the noise levels, and it advises the government on various policies and regulations related to noise pollution. So, noise being one form of pollution, it comes under the purview of CPCB. In the state, the same similar role performed at the state level is by the State Pollution Control Board, and here they are also implementing the noise pollution control measures, but at the state level, and they coordinate with the local authorities such as the municipal corporations and the panchayatis, and they monitor and regulate the noise pollution in their respective states. So, the key regulatory bodies, again we have the urban local bodies such as the municipal corporation, below that hierarchy, and other local governing bodies which play a key role at the local level in your area. So, whenever you have got something which is creating a lot of noise, it becomes a public nuisance. In the last lecture we studied that the noise is now been added as a public nuisance under the Indian legislation, and that nuisance reporting you can do at the municipal corporation or at the nearest police, but the police will not do the action. The municipality then you can approach and they can take steps to ensure that the noise remains at a specified level and does not create any nuisance. Similarly, various NGOs are the informal organizations. They are also playing key role in terms of various kind of societal issues, and noise can at a beyond a certain level and with repetitive occurrence can become a social issue. It is, as I said, a public nuisance, and then whenever it creates a lot of disturbance, even the NGOs, they play active role. They advocate for noise pollution control, they create public awareness, they also can enforce legal actions and can file complaints and monitor the noise at the various local levels. So, this is just one such example where a campaign was led by the Awas Foundation, which is an NGO in Mumbai, and here they were seriously campaigning against there should be no honking while people are driving in the streets or in the roads. So, no honking day, and that came into practice. And if you go into the metropolitan areas, you see that on an average people blow very less horn while they are driving the cars. So, this was the campaign led by them which led to a significant amount of change in the metropolitan cities. Let us see some of the landmark court cases with regard to this. So, some of the judicial interventions. The very first case which briefly I will discuss is it is a case of the Church of God or the Full Gospel versus KKR Majestic Colony Welfare Association, which happened in the year 2000. So, the judgment was given in 2000. So, what was it? Here the Supreme Court held that no religious or cultural practice can infringe upon the health and the peace of others through noise pollution. This was a landmark case, and the court had ruled that loudspeakers used in religious practices should comply with the permissible noise limits. So, nothing, be it any reason, be it cultural, religious or any region, nothing can infringe on the right of individuals to live peacefully. And it became, this was one of the landmark cases that affirmed that no individual or group has a right to create noise that disturbs others' well-being, regardless of the reason, being it cultural or religious. In the same way, there was another case, noise pollution regulation and control rules of 2000, which was included in the Bombay High Court. So, various PILs were filed by the NGO Awas Foundation, and the code imposed restrictions on the noise during the festivals, processions and various kind of public events, particularly in the silent zones like hospitals and educational institutes. So, in that case, these interventions, they have significantly reduced the noise during the festival seasons in Mumbai and have raised public awareness about adhering to noise limits. One another case where it is a forum, Prevention of Environmental and Noise Pollution versus the Union of India in the year 2005. So, here the case focused on the restrictions for firecrackers during the festival like Diwali, which is, we all know that it is a big festival in India, and lot of firecrackers are usually burnt, and the case was filed that there should be some restrictions on the noise level of the firecrackers as well as the amount of firecrackers that are burnt, because if done on a large scale, it can lead to both noise pollution and air pollution, and whatever debris that come out after the firecrackers are burned, they lead to land pollution. So, a lot of pollution happens. So, the Supreme Court, it placed strict regulations on the timing and the permissible decibel levels of firecrackers to control the noise pollutions. So, because of this ruling, what happened? The use of firecrackers during the night time after 10 p.m. was limited, and it emphasized that only eco-friendly firecrackers should be used, which resulted in a more quieter and eco-friendly Diwali and fewer complaints about the noise pollution. So, let us see, lot of measures are being taken not just in India but worldwide, and policies are in place, there's a lot of provisions and policies in place, but does that mean that we don't have noise pollution, or does that mean that we still don't have any complaints with respect to noise? That is not the case. Even though there are so many regulations and policies in place, still we do hear often the complaints related to noise in our day-to-day life. So what are the key challenges which are preventing the enforcement of these noise regulation? The first being the lack of awareness and public cooperation. So low public awareness, many people, they are not still unaware of the harmful effects of noise pollution or the regulations in place to control it. If you go to some of the suburban areas, to various kind of factory settings, and you have migrants from poorer regions who are earning their daily wage by working in such hazardous factory setup and environment, if you go and ask them and if you conduct interviews with them, what you will find is that they are still not aware that how harmful this noise level can be. Lately, many of them are still aware. Suppose somebody is working in some kind of chemical plant or factory, then they would be aware that okay, the chemicals, they can be harmful, the fumes and the smoke and dust could be harmful for them. But when it comes to noise, that something is making noise, it still becomes an insidious form of pollution. Okay, not many people, especially the people from poorer and illiterate region, they are not really aware that this noise can also harm. It is also one of the important forms of pollution, apart from the land and the water and the air pollution. So land, water and air pollution, they are more common and people are more aware about that, but noise pollution is something which people are still not very aware at the grassroots level, and this awareness needs to be created. And I hope this course can also be one means through which I can spread this message to everybody, to create the awareness about the harmful effects of noise and the need for regulating noise. Then also cultural resistance, in many regions noise is culturally being accepted or sometimes even encouraged during certain events such as festivals, weddings and political rallies. Now I am not against any community or any kind of celebration, but I am saying that sometimes the louder, for example, the wedding is happening or some kind of social gathering or event is happening, then people actually rejoice the fact that it was a success if the loudspeaker was blasting at huge levels and people even 3 to 4 blocks away can hear the noise, and that means the event is a success. That is how the tendency becomes. If you do a quieter ceremony or a quieter celebration, then that does not give them the feel that they have celebrated. So that form of cultural tendency is there, which obviously restricts sometimes proper enforcement, as well as political rallies and various other such gatherings there where making more noise is actually being encouraged. Then we also have inadequate monitoring and enforcement infrastructure. So once again I would like to emphasize here that air pollution, land and water pollution, they have been there, and you have more stringent and more strict policies as well as more strict monitoring of air, water and land pollution, but noise pollution is still considered a secondary, it's sort of considered as a not as a as it is not given at that level of priority as the air pollution or land pollution. So noise pollution becomes an insidious form, and hence we still, compared to the other forms, have inadequate monitoring and inadequate enforcement. So lack of noise monitoring systems in various places, especially in the developing and the underdeveloped nations, and then insufficient personnel where regulatory, even if we have the infrastructure available, the regulatory bodies available and the policies available, everything is there, but due to the lack of people working in this area, it cannot be even if you have the framework ready, you have all the laws and rules, you have got the agencies that can monitor the noise and report, but still due to the lack of people working in this area and insufficient staff and resources, the monitoring cannot be done on a large scale and enforced in every aspect of life. Similarly, we have very complex urban environments, and again noise monitoring in such kind of complex environment becomes an issue. Then as a developing country or underdeveloped country, they have their own challenges, because it is like a trade off. The developing countries, they are at the cusp of development. lot of factories are coming up, lot of urbanization is happening, whereas in the developed nations this has already happened, and now the developed nations are more keen on focusing on the quality of life. So things such as curbing the noise pollution, improving the sound quality, all of that, having a better emotional health, psychology and all these things, they are more part of the developed nations because they have already solved their grassroots problems with respect to poverty and modernization. Whereas in the developing countries they still prioritize, and they have to, so they are prioritizing their economic development. So economic development is definitely necessary to make a nation strong, but sometimes there are pros and cons. It comes at a cost of degrading the environment, and which includes also increasing the noise pollution. Then in the developed countries we have so many informal and unregulated sectors, not everything is properly monitored and managed. So a significant portion of noise, let us say in India, comes from these informal or unregulated activities such as the street vendors, various unregistered small businesses, unregulated transportations, etc. So when they are not registered and not, so monitoring them and regulating them becomes obviously challenging. We also have limited institutional capacity. So once again the focus here and the prioritization is given to economic development, reducing the poverty, increasing the economy of the country, and hence the majority of the resources, both human resources or monetary resources, go into these areas which are given a priority, and hence there is less priority given to the quality of life, such as due to the reduction of noise pollution, and therefore we have limited institutional capacity. The developing countries, they lack such strong institutions that can, so environmental management and these things, they face challenges, and enforcing noise regulation definitely becomes a challenge. So I would say that most of the times in such nations or in such regions, reducing noise level or improving the sound quality, that becomes more of a luxury to them. It's not taken as a necessity in life, it's rather taken as a luxury. But I would like to say that this is not a luxury, this is actually a necessity of life. Then technological and urbanization trend. So globally we have we have the boost in technology, we have the boost in urbanization. So this is a trend throughout the world, and with this trend there is rise in the traffic, there is rise in the industrial noise, rapid urbanization, growing vehicle numbers, increase in the cities, more people concentrated in small regions creating more amount of noise, lot of traffic and transportation noise and industrial noise is happening. Various construction and urban development keeps happening. If you go to, for example, Gurgaon, so that is a very fast developing city, and at every block you will see some construction activity that is happening. And it is not just the case with that city, but in fact most of the cities, they are now expanding and developing, and you can see a construction activity going on literally at every block of the city, and that is really an annoying noise source. Okay, it is very annoying and it can really be irritating at some times. Then the noise also comes from these various, because with the rising cities you have more people, densely populated areas, and you need public transportation which has its own noise problem and creates more and more noise. So obviously these are some of the challenges and people are working towards it. Slowly and steadily we are getting to create awareness, and various noise control measures are being now undertaken. So one of the major, so most of these noise control measures will be discussed in detail in the next module of this course, where in the next module we will see about the principles of noise control. So we will first finish the module, then we will see about the instrumentation used in noise control engineering, and then we will see what is the principle in noise control and what are the various techniques, and we will study each of these techniques in detail. But to sum up, various technological interventions that are being done in noise control can be classified as active noise control technology, where what you do is that noise is essentially you can say it is a wave or a signal, so some kind of pressure disturbance, and suppose you create an antiphase sound which is just the opposite of it. So suppose you have some pressure P equals to A cos omega t plus minus kx. then you create another P dash which is just negative of this quantity. Then by the principle of superposition, these noises, the two pressures, they are going to cancel out each other and the noise is going to dim down. So, that is the principle behind active noise control, which we will discuss in detail in the lectures ahead. Then we have passive noise control, where various kind of materials are being used in the pathway of noise to block the noise. So, you have barriers and panels. Then they are blocking the propagation of sound in the pathways, and you can especially see in the places like highways, railways, industrial facilities, where you have these big barriers. They are, one of their primary function is to stop or block the propagation of sound from these noisy areas to the nearby neighborhood silent areas. Then various sound absorbing panels can be installed, which are made of porous materials, and they control the reflection within a room and bring the reverberation in the room down. Then soundproofing technologies are being developed. Then we have various kind of materials and technologies, they are coming up. Double glazed windows, soundproofing walls and floors, door seals. Then there is a movement in research. So, if you go into the field of noise control, we have a movement where we are getting towards quiet machinery design and quiet equipment. So, you will see that in the principle of noise control, if you can change the source, that is the most effective form of noise control. So, if for example, from a conventional engine vehicle you are shifting to an electric vehicle which runs on a motor, not an engine, and so essentially it is much quieter. So, automatically the noise is curbed down. So, quieter machines, more the machines where the mechanism of power generation itself is not noisy, that movement is being taken place in the field of research. Then we have various noise mapping and monitoring systems like sensors and computer algorithms that are creating the 3D visuals of noise level that can be used for monitoring the overall noise level in the urban areas, industrial sites, and we can see what are high intensity zones, what are low intensity zones, and we can map, just like we create the maps, the political maps and the various kind of maps of various regions. We can create sound maps of the various regions and come to know how the sound level is distributed in a particular big area, and accordingly the solution can be put in place. Then obviously the only technologies can be developed, policies can be developed, but till people do not implement it at their individual level, it cannot become effective. So, public awareness and community involvement is very important, otherwise anything you invent, but if it is not being used, what is the usage? So, public awareness is very necessary. They have to understand the noise pollution and its harmful effects, and also they need to know what are the regulations in place, so that if they think that something is creating a lot of noise, then they can approach a proper regulatory body and they can file complaints at the right place and bring this noise level down. The awareness at the individual level is required. Then the role of community in noise reduction, community based noise monitoring can be done, public reporting systems can be in place, and community campaigns and initiatives can be taken at the local level, as well as educational programs and outreach. So, for example, over here this lecture series is supposedly being taken by the undergraduate, postgraduate and industry personnel. So, this is a series on noise control. But if you think about it, at the very school level, at the primary education and the secondary education level, you hardly have subjects related to noise control. So, I say that why start this at the UG once the student is big enough at the UG level? Why not we have something at the very school level as well. So, even at the primary education we can at least educate, we can inculcate some good civic sense into our kids, that noise, making excessive noise is bad and what are the harmful effects of noise. So, these kind of just the basic information with respect to noise pollution can also be incorporated in the primary and the secondary school education system. Other than that, in the various universities we can have courses, public outreach, even in social media, local media, these can play a big role in elaborating about noise pollution and noise regulations. Workshops and events can also be conducted from time to time. So, more activities need to be there so that people are aware and they cautiously make a choice to have to lead a quieter and better way of life. Similarly, noise free zones and public campaigns. So, in many of these many of the developed nations and in some of the regions in India as well, there are some residential zones as well as hospital zones that have been made as quiet zones, and we need to have such noise free zones, and the public should know why, because obviously the residents or the people residing there they need critical care, and noise can be very harmful for them. Then public campaigns for noise free hours can be in place, cultural sensitivity and respect for traditions. So, over here obviously we need at the end of the day balancing of the tradition and the noise control. So, and encouraging more noise friendly celebrations all throughout India, and with this so these are some of the ways in which noise can be controlled. So, how do I see the future of noise regulation? So, in the future technological innovations are being in place for noise monitoring and control. So, nowadays smart noise monitoring systems or the use of artificial intelligence in noise control and noise monitoring is taking a boost, and various AI techniques can be used for noise monitoring and noise control. Then policy evolution and stricter regulations is definitely required. We can have more global standards. The regulations in India could be aligned with the global standards, and more comprehensive regulations could be there. Right now some of the regulations are very vague or objective and may not be applicable in every scenario. So, more comprehensive guidelines can be in place, and more enhanced enforcement mechanisms is required, and obviously public participation and crowdsourced data is required. And we need some sustainable noise control solutions as well, such as we will discuss about acoustic metamaterials. They are one of the recent techniques on low frequency noise control. Then there are various green acoustic materials which are being used. For example, the materials from these plant fibers, animal skins. So, various kind of plant fibers like jute, cotton, and coir, and so many things. So, these are the green materials which are available in abundance, but they are all good absorber of sound, and they can be used and incorporated because they are obviously more environment friendly and have lesser carbon footprint. Then noise reducing urban design is required. So, whenever a new city is being planned, the city planning committee and the city planning commission should incorporate noise. Noise should also be a part of the city design, not just how to manage the traffic, how to manage the aesthetics, but also the noise level in the cities. So, in the urban design itself noise can be a significant thing that has to be considered. Quieter power sources need to be invented and used. So, with this I would like to close this lecture. So, it is time to educate those around us on the impact of noise pollution, and I hope you take this responsibility and do that yourself as well. Thank you.